Hey, what's good, everybody? You know what time it is. Your boy Jeffrey L. Boney here for another hot edition of Real Talk Junkies Live. Make sure you share the link. You know what time it is. We need everybody on this thread. We need everybody checking this out. Of course, your comments are always welcome in the chat, but we need you to send it to your friends, your family, your foes, whoever you need to get this information. We're talking about something very, very important today in that, you know, when we think about election time, which we're in the midst of course, coming up in November, the November elections, many times we think about stuff like the president or the governor or senators or Congress people, but we don't really think about the people that truly impact our lives on a day-to-day basis. Either you've been a part of it or you have a family member or friends that have been a part of. I'm talking about the court system. And here to join me today, talk about a Fresh Start program that they've created, but also some other key components of everything dealing with the courts is none other than Judge Genesis Draper and Judge Shannon Baldwin of Harris County Criminal Court number 4 and number 12. All right. Welcome to Real Talk Junkies today. Thank you. All right, y'all. So, like I said, no pressure on y'all. Y'all wear the black robes and make all of the decisions, have the gavel. But tell everybody, first of all, what the details or the criteria of being a judge. I mean, what does it actually consist of? I'll start with you, Shannon. Judge Baldwin, excuse me.
First and foremost, to obviously go to law school, become a lawyer first, and there's a requirement, I believe, 4 or 5 years. 4 years, I think it is, that you have to practice law before you can actually run for judge.
Okay, and so you're a lawyer, and so not every lawyer can make a good judge, right?
That's right.
All right, so what makes you Judge Draper?
Well, so I will say we are both trial judges, and we're both trial attorneys before this, and so I think that really helps. Obviously, it's not a requirement, but I would say it makes a really big difference in the way in which we conduct ourselves in court and are able to move through our docket. Some courts aren't as trial intensive. We are both criminal court judges, and so that experience has been really helpful.
So, like I just said earlier, as to start the program, judges make a huge impact on everybody's lives. There's different kind of courts and judges, criminal court as you all are, civil court judges. But talk about the importance of how judges can make or break your lives.
One of the things, and I probably easily say for most of our, at least I can speak for our county criminal court judges, we're very conscious of people coming in and getting convictions on their record.
Who are we talking about?
Defendants. When defendants come in and get average citizen coming in, you've made one mistake, and it's critical to watch and not jump on that conviction because it has lasting effects that you may not realize, such as sometimes applying for student loans. If you have certain types of convictions, you can't get them. Getting leases for apartments, if you have certain types of convictions, you won't be able to get that. So we're conscious of that. That's why we, at least, I'll speak for myself in this, we seek alternatives to sentencing so that those options are not permanently, deprived from that person. That's what's really, really big.
You have a lot of people who believe that judgeships shouldn't be partisan as far as how you're appointed or elected to the bench. In this case, here in Texas, but it turns out to be that way. Prior to the what you all refer to as the black girl magic, the 19 judges that ran for Harris County Court and the majority won. Prior to that, you had a good old boy system. A lot of judges who were on the bench were Republican. And so there was a lack of seemingly sensitivity to individuals based off of maybe race or socioeconomic status. So, having African Americans, on the bench, does that make a true difference, Judge Draper?
Absolutely is the short answer. There's so much diversity in this county on the judiciary, and it's made a really big difference in the impact of lives of people that come. You ask, who encounters the court system? Everybody, everyone, right? We both have been down to the courthouse fighting something, whether or not it's a traffic ticket or people come there for family issues, civil issues. You will have to encounter the court system. So you want to make sure that there are people there with perspective. And we have much more perspective and diversity than we've ever seen. As you mentioned, a record number of black women that sit on the judiciary at this point. And so, yeah, it's a big change in the way in which people encounter the system, but also a big change in how people view the judiciary. And like you said, people then say, well, should we do it differently now that it looks differently? And so, we're on Real Talk, so.
I was going to say, there's a little truth for you right there. She sort of opened the door. But,
hey, keep going in that pathway.
Well, can I add something too? There were 19 women. I was a part of that in 2018 that were elected, and that group of women were not just criminal court judges. It spanned the range of different areas of law, both civil, juvenile, criminal. It included all of that, and 19 out of over 100 judges that sit in Harris County. So even though that was a huge number, understand that was 19 people of over 100 positions. So, and that just highlighted African American women because it was the first time that had ever happened. However, our judiciary, the bench as a whole throughout Harris County, really has evolved, and it is very, very diverse now and much more reflective of what the community looks like. And that's what we all strive for, because we're able to bring in that personal experience just for the sense of understanding, so that you can get beyond what's on paper of a person and hopefully seek to resolve or solve an issue so that person doesn't come back.
So outside of being African American, if I go to the polls, because a lot of people don't even think about voting for the judge races. I mean, there's a huge undervote count when it comes to people going to the elections, whether it's the midterm or whether it's the presidential election year. Outside of being African American, what can an average citizen, a voter, look for to know that they're voting for the right candidate? I remember back a few years back, there was a person who was running for United States Congress. Her name was Keisha Rogers. I don't know if you remember her, but she was a LaRouche Democrat. She was all for getting rid of Obama and all the things anti-democratic. And so she won the Democratic nomination. And so what you ended up happening was the state Democratic Party saying vote for all Democrats. Now keep in mind, straight ticket was still in play. Mm-hmm. So they was like, vote for all Democrats, but not her. So it's like, wow, so you find yourself, saying, okay, there's a bunch of black folks on the ballot, but what if they're not the right person?
All of us live stream. All of the judges. Now that's been one of the benefits of having most of us live stream. One of the benefits of COVID, we got really ramped up pretty quickly. Many of us live stream. You can go on and look at that court and see what that judge is doing on a day-to-day basis. If you agree with how they're handling their case, then it's an easy way to say, sure, I'll vote for that person. Or you speak to other attorneys or other people who work in that court, and they typically always have an opinion about that judge. And no one's ever shy about talking about a judge and how they run the court. So I would say ask
especially
someone.
If you ruled against them.
Exactly, right? Well, that is the other side of it, but it's the truth, right?
Yeah, remain on that bench. You know what I'm saying? If you're a great judge.
I do. So, I represent a really large area, right? We run countywide, so it's hard to reach every single person. But little things that I do to try to show people that, yes, we do run in partisan races, but we are unique in that the judiciary, we're governed by the law. So whether or not you're Republican or Democrat, the law is what it is.
Right.
And so, for example, when I have jury members come down, I always talk with them afterwards. How was your experience? Was it what you expected? Did you feel like you understood the process? And I know that I haven't brought all Democrats down, but people have been really vocal about how well the courthouse is running. I'm sure they hear any number of things out in the news or the newspaper, but then when they actually have to encounter the system as a jury member, they're like, wow, I really felt like I understood. I really felt like you valued our time. I really felt like I knew what was expected. And so that's one of the ways that I do it. I can't reach every inch of this county, but what I can do, and along with my colleagues, is really try to represent well and make sure that people understand. I'm not like your legislator. I'm not like, your mayor, where you can call and complain and I change what I do. The law governs what I do.
Yeah.
But what I can do is educate my community to make sure that they understand what my job is and hopefully you like it.
Yeah, I hear so many, or have heard so many stories. I'm a journalist as well, and I hear so many stories about people who were given harsh sentences or leniency because they were a donor or they were a supporter of a particular judge. And that's the challenge I think that many, and I want to get into the Fresh Start program shortly, but I just feel like it's important for our listeners to understand the dynamics of being not only a judge, which is supposed to be impartial, right, but also having, having to run as a Democrat or a Republican on a ticket. And so you have people who contribute to your campaigns. And I'm not just talking about y'all, I'm just talking about whoever it is. And so it makes it challenging because, like I tell people, I'm an elected official, I'm a city council, mayor pro tem in Missouri City. And so, a guy asked me, he said, well, what am I going to get for my campaign contribution? I said, well, good government. And so, but there was an expectation there that because I gave to you, I need you to give back to me in some shape, form, or fashion. And so that's where I applaud judges like yourselves who are impartial and follow the rule of law. But I know that there are some that have and maybe are on the bench that have those challenges.
I guess it's certainly possible, but what I can say is, for the most part, because obviously I don't know every judge personally, and I'm not going to try to,
Right.
to hold up their reputations, but I think that at least within the county criminal courts, listen, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Every judge has their own personality. You know what to expect when you walk through those doors if you're one of those attorneys, and I would guarantee you that those who have contributed to whatever extent, they would find that it has not purchased them anything. It just doesn't happen. And I'll say this, we don't raise a lot of money in that manner on our level at all. And in fact, county criminal courts, and I'm sort of happy about that. The expectation really is very little with regard to as far as what happens with donations.
Well, I'm not more so speaking about you guys. Let me just backtrack for a second because I've heard stories, and you've read stories where people were given harsh sentences because maybe there was a group, maybe a law enforcement group or some sort of other fringe group that pushes for harsher sentencing, and they were a campaign contributor. And you hear these stories all the time, and it saddens me. And I'm one that rails against it, where people have gotten out of jail after having served 25, 30 years for a crime they didn't commit. But you found that the judge was complicit, and the prosecutors withheld evidence, and the law enforcement, the investigators did the same. And it's like, man, you get excited for the fact that these people get out of jail, but I don't get excited because they shouldn't have been in jail in the first place. But nobody's held accountable. And so a lot of it is tied to who supports them, and that's what I was really more so speaking to.
Would you agree that's not the norm now, though?
Right. From what I see, of course not. But I'm saying that, it's all, collaborative. I mean, it's all together. I mean, whether it's the ones now or the ones then,
Right.
It's still the system.
And there's a lot of work to be done, right, to even do away with the look of impropriety, right?
Right.
That even when we're all doing what we're supposed to do, there are steps that we can take to try and make the community feel more confident in the impartiality. One of the things that we've done at the county criminal court level, is created the Office of Managed Assigned Counsel. We appoint attorneys to tons of people every day that can't afford a lawyer. And for many, many years, it was a real pay-to-play who gets appointments or who donates to campaigns. And so we wanted to, even though we had kind of long since, at least in this new group, moved away from that, we wanted the community to feel confident in that. I can't just say, hey, I'm not doing that anymore. What we did was we took the power of appointing lawyers out of the judge's hands. We still find a person indigent, but we have a separate independent agency who now does those appointments. So I don't know who's going to show up in my court to take an appointment. And I think that that's helped with, having confidence that this person that I just appointed, who also donated to my campaign, now they feel beholden to me, and not to the person that they represent. So there are some things that we can do to try and increase that. I know other judges have governed themselves in different ways. I have a cap on how much you can donate to me if you practice in front of me, right? It's pretty easy. Not everybody practices in front of me. So what I was trying to avoid is, our really successful DWI lawyers coming in and, contributing $5,000. Not because I would rule in their favor, but because people might think, okay, you know what, that's why they're getting all the dismissals.
Right.
And so it's just like, you know what, I don't need that. So let's just set a cap so that nobody could look at this amount that you donated and say, I don't have to do that, but that's just something that I can do. Really doesn't change the game in my, how much I can raise, but also helps to build confidence in the community.
This conversation and this type of transparency, I believe, is what the citizens, the people need to hear. But to have that confidence, to figure out why it's important when people say my vote doesn't count. Well, when they hear someone like yourselves talk about the changes and the integrity that you have, being a person that's on the bench, being elected by them, that's why we need to get to the polls and vote for people like that. But when you have that, impropriety, or that you think about, you say, oh man, this is what, it's all collective. They don't know that you all have brought forth change. They don't know that you all have, have these types of morals or convictions or beliefs or caps on how much people give for these particular reasons. When they hear that, I think that gives them more confidence. And I'm so excited about the program you all have created, the Fresh Start program. Talk about people who may have experienced the law in a way that put a record on, they had a misdemeanor charge, or is it felonies as well? Misdemeanors, okay. So describe the program itself and describe how a person could, I guess, get their records expunged, or how does that work?
Sealed. So,
Sealed.
Or I guess that's I guess sealed could be something else too, but to receive sort of a non-disclosure, to seal the record. I'm kind of be careful with that because that could be used alternatively.
Well, let's talk about misdemeanors. Like, what type of misdemeanors are we talking about?
All misdemeanors for the most part.
Like, what do you see often where these people
probably the most common would be, like maybe not DWIs, but like assaults, or you may see thefts. You see mostly things like that, especially thefts, crimes of moral turpitude. Those are huge and really important if you can have them sealed so that if a person is looking for a job, then that particular type of offense won't be seen to the public, so that they could actually secure good employment.
So this is the second go-round for this program.
Second month.
Tell me who started it and why?
So, I think it's hard for me to pinpoint who started it. I know our presiding judge, Toria Finch, is where, I was first introduced. And so I think she was kind of the one who really kind of thought this up. And we found ourselves in a position where everybody's like, public safety, judges need to do their part. And our hands are so tied, it's so limited by the law. And so we said, okay, what can we do to promote public safety? Well, one of the things that we could do is for the people who are eligible to have this conviction sealed, or this charge sealed, let's do that for those people so that they can seek employment without that on their record. And also in doing that, let's point them in the direction of some things that may be beneficial. So whether or not that's registering your child for school, whether or not that's getting vaccines for yourself and your family, different things that we offer there at the fair to give people a second chance. So yes, it is people who have encountered the criminal justice system, but we have plenty of people who just walked in, who have never visited our courts.
Where were there, like 14, I think, people on last month, and I think there are maybe upwards of 17 people signed up just this Saturday. That's who we know. That's not people that will walk in off the street. But to also just piggyback on your previous question, this program mirrors that of the Music City Community Court, which is out of Nashville, Tennessee. And so Judge Finch is from Nashville. She collaborated with another judge there in Tennessee and got the idea from them and brought it here to us. They have a much more expansive program. And we're just starting ours. We hope to be able to expand, potentially even getting grants through the Department of Justice at some point. But for now, we're starting with the Fresh Start program. And like Judge Draper said, it's going to, we hope, eventually just open the floodgates to helping people have restorative justice, so that they can go back into the community, be productive citizens. And anytime you're productive, anytime you can financially take care of your families, yourself, that's obviously going to have a positive impact on crime.
So give us a overall breakdown of the program itself. What does it entail?
Well, so we work in collaboration with the probation department, and they look at a certain time period. We have different dates for all the people who have successfully completed their supervision or their probation, and at the conclusion, the case is dismissed. That was the agreement when they first pled. So their case is dismissed, but it still shows up. And so when you go to look for a job, it says, oh, theft, dismissed. Well, now they know you've been charged with theft. And so they give us this universe of people that we have the power to seal that, where only like law enforcement agencies can still see it,
Right.
but employers, places where you go to live, they wouldn't be able to see it. So they give us that list of people, and once we, kind of put that through the vetting process and make sure that everyone qualifies, then we reach out. We have the public defender's office reach out to those people and see if they're interested in doing that. And then we've gotten a really good response of people that want to do it. It's a slow process. I mean, we have tons of people going back decades, who have been eligible for this, but just haven't done it. We all know people that have had a charge from 19 or 20 years old, and then they got it dismissed. Well, then you go on about your business. You never come back down to the courthouse, hire a lawyer to help you get it sealed and do all of that. They just settle for the dismissal. And so we wanted to kind of make it a little less cumbersome for people that qualify to be able to do that. So when they come to this program, they've already been screened. We already know that they qualify. And so when they come that Saturday, it's kind of ceremonial to say, hey, we're here to kind of like support you in your fresh start. And then we have a number of different county partners that are there to offer services to those people or anyone else who shows up.
So what you're saying is if a person is charged with a crime, misdemeanor, and they get their charge dismissed, it's still on their record. And they have a responsibility, or they can request it be sealed. I mean, how does that?
They
Right.
can
It's
request
not
it.
automatic. And so if people know it as deferred. And so, oh, I got a deferred. I got a 1-year deferred for theft. Then you successfully completed it. The dismissal happened. That happened automatically when you finished it. But the sealing of that does not happen automatically, and it will continue to show up unless you do
So what if
something
you
about
were
it.
charged with a crime and it was just dismissed? I mean, you didn't have to go through what you're talking about, deferred. It's still on your record?
It's still there, and that's a whole other process, which is not something that we're offering at this point. That requires an expunction, which is actually a civil process. But yeah, it's still there.
I'm talking about
So it's
if you
always
didn't,
gonna
even
be
if you didn't get convicted, didn't go to trial, didn't go.
outright dismissed.
It was
Maybe
just
they
dismissed.
got it wrong. The case is completely dismissed. It is still on your record.
Wow,
And if you want it removed, there are steps to take to do that.
wow. But this is not a part of the program, the Fresh Start program that you are offering.
Right, because what we did was we had to find something that we could do pretty much on our own.
That we
wanted
control.
to get started
Gotcha.
now.
Gotcha.
And so in order to have to collaborate with this agency and that agency, we were like, okay, you know what, we can do that in the long run. What can we control? What is something that we can do ourselves? And so that's a smaller universe of cases, but it did allow us to get started. But I think one of the things that Judge Baldwin mentioned is that the hope is to expand this program to include those types of things. We have to collaborate with our civil judges and the district attorney's office and things like that to try to make that program larger.
So what are you all doing to get the word out about this program?
We're coming to see you today. We do have active social media for Harris County Courts, by the way. So we do post there. Literally, Judge Finch, it's all about hitting the streets and canvassing and talking to individuals to let them know about it. And we have partners. Can I list the partners? Because I really
Absolutely.
want to thank them because they also help us get the word out. So HISD, Houston Food Bank, the Harris County Public Defender's Office, Impact Houston, Harris County Community Supervision Department, WorkFaith, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, Workforce Solutions, and Houston Health. They all are partnering with us and bringing services to anyone that wants to come in and participate. It's free to the public. And listen, when you go to an attorney, by the way, and you say, hey, I want to get my record sealed, that's not free. Right? That's a service you pay for in addition to the filing fees that you pay for. So this is really, really big. You don't have to walk in with a dime. If you qualify, you're going to be able to get this.
So what are the qualifications for the program?
It changes, but essentially, I say it changes
if
per
you're
the
black,
type of charge.
that's it? I mean,
No, well, that has nothing to do with it. But
hey, I'm black. I need to.
as long as you successfully completed your deferred adjudication probation, essentially that will put you in line to get that done. There are some other nuances depending on the type of charge, but that is the primary.
And if you're not sure, just come on down. The
Right.
public defender's office is there, and they are screening people, so they can look on the spot and say, hey, you're not on the list for this time, but it looks like you do qualify. Let's get you in the queue to get that done. So it doesn't hurt. It's free to just come down there and check and see.
Check it out. Yeah.
So how often do you all offer this, and where?
We're going to offer it quarterly right now, and we're at the YET program, which is in right at Finnegan Park. Let me give you the address. May 14th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The YET Center, 4900 Providence Street. So that way you have the address. You cannot.
From
won't
what
miss
time to
that.
what time?
10 to 12.
From
10 a.m. to 12.
10 a.m.
This
to 12
Saturday,
noon.
10
This
a.m.
Saturday,
to noon.
my birthday. All right.
And we'll be doing it quarterly, and we're going to be changing the location. The YET Center has been great. We've done this one and the last one at the YET Center, which was a great location. But we want to make sure that people can access it in different parts of the city, and so we're going to try to, at a minimum, kind of get in the different
4
precincts.
So once a quarter.
Yes.
And this is May 14th from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Everybody, make sure you go check it out or refer some people over there, and we'll make sure we post it on the social media, Forward Times social media page, the information. So I want to ask a question because I get this often from people, especially those that have gone through the criminal justice system. And those that have people that have gone through, why after you've been charged with a crime, say you go to court or you're convicted or you have a plea, you serve your time, why do you have to do probation or parole? Isn't that like yet another sentence?
So, yes. So, obviously we don't have to deal with that because people don't have parole after, and if you do a sentence with us, you're just done. But just as an aside, like I was a federal public defender before I was a judge, and so the federal government, they don't have parole. So whatever your sentence is, that's what it is. But almost every sentence is also accompanied with supervised release.
Right.
And so I always thought that was interesting because it was kind of a one-size-fits-all. They almost never break from that. And so I do think that is a good question. We're not able to really get into the weeds of that, but I do think that deserves some thought because doing that in every case suggests that you are not taking an individualized look at each person. And so I know that was a question / frustration I had as a federal public defender, but I don't make the laws and the rules, but that is something that I think to the extent a judge has control over it in the same way that we do any of our sentences, you have to take an individualized look. You can't say, well, everybody that's charged with this, they're going to get this from me, and this from me. Well, then that means that you are not putting any thought into the person in front of you.
Right. Hence the importance of diversity. She said it all, and I could not have said it better. But like I said, hence the importance of diversity to be able to take into consideration all of that and look at that person standing in front of you so that what comes out, the end result, is what's tailored to help this situation, not just a cookie cutter approach to all things legal. That will never work.
So does Texas have mandatory minimum sentencing for certain crimes in your court?
They do.
Yes.
If you have certain convictions, so if you've been previously convicted, then there are mandatory minimums. We don't see it as much, quite frankly, in misdemeanor, because generally that's negotiated out when people plead, but it can happen. You see that more in felony court, where your minimum may be 5 or your minimum may be 25 if you've been to the penitentiary a couple times before. So we certainly do have mandatory minimums, and there are, of course, advocacy groups out there that argue against mandatory minimums.
Well, I'm one
For
of
some
them.
reason.
I'm actually a part of a group called Families Against Mandatory
I'm
Minimums.
familiar with them.
Yeah, and I think that it's a travesty because, like the lady in Florida, for instance, who was sentenced to, I think it was 30 years, 25, 30 years, who shot the gun because her husband, she said, was abusive, and she did it as a warning shot, and because she had, I guess, a record prior, and she used that weapon, she was automatically given that amount of time, mandatory minimum in Florida, which has some of the worst laws, actually. But the thing is, the judge's hands was tied because that's the law.
All of those things can still be negotiable, which you sort of, depending on the type of charge, right? But just understand that the district attorney's office they bring the charges, right? So the type of criminal offense, those things, they can change if they find it appropriate. And what we see in our court oftentimes is that they may reduce a charge to something, or reduce or abandon the enhancement, which allows then for them to do some type of lower sentence or get rid of that mandatory minimum. So that happens quite frequently in our courts.
So it's allowable in Texas.
Yes and no, right? It
Right.
is allowable, assuming that the state abandons whatever enhancement that's triggering this mandatory minimum.
Right.
So if they
So
abandon
you're talking about the district attorneys,
Yes.
or
right,
they're the
District
only
attorney-
ones that can request something less than the mandatory minimum.
they would have to abandon their pursuit of those enhancements, right? Because if they prove up those enhancements, then it does tie the judge's hands, and that mandatory minimum gets triggered. And so that if they abandon that, or if they're unable to prove those prior convictions, then that you wouldn't be dealing with a mandatory minimum. I think FAM especially gets really involved on the federal side, right? Because there are tons of mandatory minimums on that side that get triggered, that really a judge just
has no choice.
no choice to do anything about. And even prosecutors there, short of abandoning the entire charge, there are plenty of offenses that come with a mandatory minimum with no enhancement. You could have never been convicted before, and you are getting triggered by a mandatory minimum. So
as judges, what are some things you want to say to defendants that you can't say from the bench? Like, what are some things prior to coming to your courtroom that we need to be thinking about?
Probably not a good idea.
Well, let me not say we, because I ain't trying to come before you at all. But
I'm being facetious, but this is a real thing sometimes. Not a good idea to be charged with possession of marijuana and wear the marijuana T-shirt to court. It's still illegal, even though it's not being prosecuted.
What's illegal? To wear the shirt?
Possession of marijuana.
Oh, you're talking about the actual.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah, it's still
possession.
illegal. So a lot of people just come in and they think that it's oh, well, you could do that now. No, that's not true. It's still on our books as something that's illegal. So I would
In
love
Texas.
in Texas, and I would love to see people really take that a bit more serious, because those, while you may not get prosecuted for the possession of marijuana, there are other offenses that are triggered and hit as a result of that marijuana. Now, thankfully, you do have some judges that are conscious of that, and we will pay attention to probable cause, but sometimes there's that moment where I feel like the technicality got the case dismissed, and this person walks out, you're happy about it being dismissed, but you really missed the lesson in it, right? So the lesson is, look, we don't want you driving and you're under the influence, whether that be alcohol or marijuana or otherwise, right? So appreciate the technicality that we're going to follow the law because we're judges, but don't miss the real lesson, right? The real lesson is, let's protect us. We don't have to do some of the things we do. Is just, waste of good time and effort on everybody's part. Think about that before you come. That's one of my
All right, I'm gonna come back for the other ones. What about you, Judge Draper?
Mine is similar. I really am hesitant before I want to just kind of lecture or get on anyone, because people come from so many different backgrounds, and so I'm conscious of that. But there are some times where I'm like,
you're a damn fool.
And so, and I'll give an example. A case did go away.
I'm gonna say what you wanted to say.
A case did go away recently because there was not probable cause for the charge that they charged. So I, explained that to him. Said I find the probable cause doesn't exist. I said, but I will say the behavior that they described, if true, sounds really dumb. And so just, I would hope that people wouldn't participate in something like that. But it's not a crime. So, go with God.
Go with God.
But just to kind of encourage, just to encourage, because this person was young, and I'm like, what they described isn't a crime, but it could still,
Well,
harm you.
that's why I'm asking these questions, because there are a lot of people that, young and old, who are ignorant about certain things, and when they come before you, they find out the hard way.
Right.
Prior to maybe, coming before you, they could have, realized, what, I shouldn't be thinking this way, doing this type of thing. So I'm coming back to you. I know you got some more.
Just that, and I while I tried to never use the position, and even in speaking to people, as a means of embarrassing anyone or belittling them in any way. But I will say I'm always appreciative when someone appears in court and they're dressed for court.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by dressed for court?
I mean, they're dressed appropriately for court, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're in a suit and tie, right?
Okay.
But just dressed appropriately for court. Those things.
Well, what's not dressed appropriately?
Like I had a gentleman recently, he came in, it's just a regular shirt, no frills, no threads, but it was like, he had it like unbuttoned to like right here, and I said, sir, if just in the future, you could just go ahead and button that all the way up. And then he like quickly, you could tell that he wears it like that in his regular life. He was
Right.
fit, and so I'm sure he just walks around like that all the time. And his lawyer, I was like, really, you should have told him. But the guy immediately fixed it, and he was like, I'm really sorry. And it just, I said, everybody doesn't come from the same background.
Right.
It never dawned on him.
Right.
I have no doubt that he'll never show up in my court like that again. But it was just like, okay, I have to say something. So
Right.
it's almost to your belly button.
Or what we see common are people that will appear in shorts when they come to court. And so in my court, my bailiff typically handles it. I don't address it. They'll have you stay outside until your case comes in, and then you come in. We handle the business, and I may make a joke or something like that and just say, but the intent is next time, because I think it sends off two messages. We want to know that you understand that this is a place of law and that you respect it. So if you come in and you're in flip-flops and your shirt, and that may be all that you have. And in that instance, that's when a defense attorney should take the time. Maybe you can go to the public defender's office and see about getting their client some clothes, because they have resources there. They can actually give you some clothes to wear. So I'm not addressing the poverty level of it, or someone who they came to court and all that they had. I'm just talking about the recognition that this is a place of law, and it's important that we respect that. Mm-hmm. It really, really is, and I think it starts off at it's a level of expectation, because they always want me to be the judge, and you always want me to uphold my responsibilities. It's important that you recognize where you are, and that we're all here for you. You are the show, defendant. Mm-hmm. You're the show, it's important to just respect that, I think.
So being attorneys is one thing, but what motivated you to run for office to become a judge? I'll start with you, Judge Draper.
So
I know you were appointed.
Right. And so in a very
but you
quick
said
and
yes,
unexpected way. Right. But not right away.
No.
Not
okay.
when I was first called. It was just so confusing. And so it was like, let me call you back. And so I had to think about it. And it wasn't about whether or not I could do the job. I had been a trial lawyer for 13 years. I knew I could do the job, but whether or not I would like it. I loved what I was doing. So whether or not I would like it. And so I decided to do it. I'm glad I did, because that previous experience really did help shape the way in which I view everything. Whether or not it's how I conduct things in my individual courtroom, or even on the administrative side that both of us are heavily involved in the courts. And so I'm glad it came to me in that way, because I don't think I would have thought of it on my own. I remember when I met Shannon through her running. And so I'm like, oh, cool, that's cool, she's running, yay, I voted for her. But it never dawned on me, and I have encouraged so many people to run. I would call people all the time, like, you should run. Even my husband, like, you should do this. He was like, no. So I never would have thought of it. I'm glad it came this way, because it's been such a blessing.
You know, that's funny to hear you say that, because when your name came up as the judge that would come in and be appointed to take up Judge Holloman's court, we were so excited. Like, oh yeah, that's a great. Yes, let's get her. Yes, please. We're so, you know, so supportive of that. I did not know you were hesitant, and rightfully so, though. It's a huge undertaking, and I have to say that when I decided to run, I had no idea it was as big as it is. I thought, as having been a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney for over 20 years before I ran, I thought my purpose was to come in and change the system. And when I say change the system, I mean I wanted to make sure that we were upholding the law as judges, that we were remove our biases, because I think the biases were more obvious prior to us getting on the bench. And so that was important to me. I wanted to treat people as human beings and offer them some humanity as well. That was important to me. I still feel that way, and that is still true to this day. Is it bigger than I expected? Yeah. The what it takes to move this wheel of justice is far more than what I do when I sit on that bench.
Wow.
For those who care and decide to get involved, we are two other judges that do that, right? You run a sober court. I also run a veterans court.
We'll be at Saturday court. We have a 3:00 meeting today to discuss another administrative issue. It's, you know, I think all of us could not have expected how much was involved on the administrative side. Glad to have the opportunity to do it, because a lot of the real work and the heavy lift happens at the administrative side, as we're developing policies and procedures and alternative courts. But yeah, I think if they had told us that in the beginning, we'd be like, wait a minute.
You might have thought about it a little harder, and maybe I would have said, you know, I probably could just talk to them judges.
All right, we got some questions from the audience.
All right, we have a few questions. The first one is, the man that came in with his shirt kind of buttoned halfway down, is he in the greater Houston area, and is he single, just playing that was a personal one. I had a whole visual because he said it was fit about how I went. I said, let me get back on the show. But before we get into the questions, Sandra Lewis has a thank you. Let's show it so you all can see it. Sandra Lewis has a thank you. She says, thank you to Judge Draper and Judge Baldwin for helping to lead us to a better way for life for our citizens. It was the assault on the citizens' rights marchers in Selma, Alabama that helped lead to the Voting Rights Act. This is what we expect for our donations and support. Create ordinance, laws, and acts depending on what the office is upholding. So thank you so much for being a part of that system. So Sandra Lewis writes that.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Absolutely. All right, next question. Contempt. One of our favorite parts is when we hear the contempt. Out of order. I don't know if I'm doing it correctly, but what are some of the instances you find people in contempt in your court, and what are the levels? I see a big smile. Let's get into it.
She's pointing at me because
you got the best example.
You know what? It's really not she's laughing because I had one of the more,
egregious,
well-known contempt issues in misdemeanor court. But it's really not the people that come before us. It's the lawyers that that sometimes will push you to that. And so, it's because people that come in, like I said, they're coming from different backgrounds. So I give a lot of leeway I'm not all bent out of shape if it's a yeah versus a yes versus a yes man. Right. That's not it. But lawyers can get really, sometimes can get really beside themselves. Most are great. Most are great. But there are occasionally sometimes where you have to redirect because it's like, you know what, this is a courtroom. And we have to, have order, and I expect lawyers to conduct themselves professionally. You never want to hold anyone in contempt if you don't have to. It's something you want to use sparingly because it comes with like jail time. So we really try not to get into all that. There are so many things that I can do before that that are equally as scary. So I can even just kind of like, okay, you're gonna be last on the docket is painful enough, right? Because you were acting out just that much.
So you're gonna get that example of what happened.
So if that happens to you,
I said, are you gonna give that example of what happened?
So you know what?
We waiting to hear the example.
I won't get all into the weeds of it, but it was a lawyer who was really, really frustrated and decided to express that frustration by like completely turning their back. And I was just like, what is happening right now? So, you
Turning
know,
their back on you?
turning their back, you know, to the court. And so I had to really, like, whew, you know, we are in the courtroom, so, like, really, what are you going to do right now?
In a
and so,
woosah moment.
right, because there are other people around. And so, you know, to really kind of figure how to take control of this, I could take control of it the way I would if I saw you, like, in the streets. Or, you know, or I can take control of it the way that reflects this black robe. And so I did. I kind of had to, like, have him immediately removed, and then go to the back and just kind of really reflect and think about what my options were. You know, make a couple calls to my colleagues.
Right.
He told me down on the ledge. And we were able to resolve it. That lawyer was able to get themselves together.
Yeah. And I should say it's more
So what
than
happened
just
to
the
him? What'd
turning
you
of
What'd
the-
you do? What'd you
Well, she
do?
probably can't get into all of that.
Oh, okay. I'm
but
like, you know,
it was more than just
I want the
turning-
juicy. I want the juicy.
Turning the back, that's probably an oversimplification of it. It really is the interruption of the court. That's when you really get into contempt. We get a lot. A lot comes at us that people are going to be disrespectful. You know, so a lot is happening in the courtroom. That's normal. I think it has leveled out over time. When we were first on the bench, it was certainly much more prevalent. It took a while for people to realize that, oh, yes, that's the judge, and yes, she's actually going to act like a judge and expect that I treat her as a judge.
Because that's what it was.
So-
It was a disruption. I could not even move on to the next case.
Right.
So you
That's
think it
the
was? Do you
difference,
think it was?
disrupting court.
Do you think it was a combination of you being new, and being black, and being a woman?
Not as well. It's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
I was going to say not
Yes.
new because you
Yes.
weren't new at that time. So I think you'd been there for a while. So it wasn't about her being new, but it may very well have been all of those other things.
But it's a big adjustment for people. I've been
It is.
surprised. It is a big adjustment for people. Everything from, you know, I've had people walk into court. I'm clearly like sitting on the bench. And they're like, you know, they're on Zoom. They're like, is that the judge? I'm like, no, I'm just sitting in her chair. I'm just sitting in her chair. So, you know.
Wearing this black robe.
You know, so it's an adjustment, and so I try to like make light sometimes, but just kind of like subtly nudge people, like, yep, they're doing that now.
I remember watching this, and we're gonna go back to the audience. I remember watching this episode of Sanford and Son when Fred Sanford, he had a ticket or whatever, and he went to court. And the judge came out as a black male judge. He was like, "We got it made. We got it made." but that wasn't the case.
Keeping on to that question, I know you expressed in your and how you answered the question that you there were several things to de-escalate or several things where you stayed in your role, even though it was a high level of disruption or disrespect. What are some of the things that you all have to do, because you all are people at the end of the day, even though you have this very, very important role? There has to be things that you come across where it's just outrageous, and yourself as a person, you're like, what is going on here? How do you separate your role in your role versus this is outrageous, and the emotions that would happen or the disbelief that would happen, you personally versus your role?
So a couple of things. One you mentioned is a judge's best friend is another judge, because you don't have the same restraints and they understand, you know, where you're coming from. So you can call another judge, and we have often talked each other off the ledge. That happens, or run an idea by that, you know, another judge, and that is really, really helpful. But for me, every day before I step out on that bench, you know, I'm robed up, and before I open my door, I say a quick little prayer. That prayer is, guide my decisions, Lord. Guide my decisions, and then I follow that with cover me. Because I don't know what's going to happen out there, what I may be approached with, and so it's important for me that I center myself, because it's not about me. And I have to remind myself that it's not about you. So even though that person's upset and they're angry and they're going off on you and maybe doing all kinds of things, it's still not about me. So I don't have to take that personal, you know, but I do have to center myself because I'm human. And it doesn't mean that when I get off that bench, I don't call, you know, Judge Draper and say, you can't believe what they just did and what they said, but I held it together, you know. But it takes that. It takes prayer, because it's again, it's bigger than me, and it's not about me, and I try to stay focused in that moment, but we're human.
And believe it or not, there are really laws to govern basically all the scenarios.
Yeah.
And so even when that situation happened to me, it was like, okay, let me crack open this book and see, you know, what the law says about contempt and whether or not, whatever I think about this behavior, if it's actually contemptuous behavior. And so, I think a lot of judges or some judges may not necessarily think about that when situations happen. There's almost always a rule or a law or a case to govern or help guide you in a situation. And
Do judges curse?
I've never heard any curse.
Okay. All right. What's the next audience question?
Oh my God, that's perfect. Amen. Amen. A lot of millennials and Gen Zers, we are torn on social media right now. We love VP Kamala Harris. There's a lot of information on social media that VP Kamala Harris was involved in putting a lot of black and brown people behind bars, and a part of those cases that got longer sentences. And we can't believe everything that we hear on social media as a black woman judge in the court of the land, all of this. How do you, what position are you in when you hear about that, and what can you say on the mixed feelings about VP Kamala Harris being for the people, but have you done this to the people?
I would say you're right I've learned now more than ever that you really have to be careful what you hear, whether or not it's just on social media or anywhere, really. If this isn't information that you have firsthand. I've learned that the hard way.
True.
As an elected official. That being said, it's tough for any person to reach the level that she did there in California. I mean, she was the top cop, and that's a tough spot to get, and it's a tough position to be in. And so I would just say we have to be really mindful. I certainly have all kinds of thoughts on, what I would have done if I was in this spot or that spot. But I don't think you really know what you would do until you're in the top spot.
Gotcha.
Right? We've seen a lot of distorting of people's records. And so I would just be mindful of that. I'm familiar loosely with her work, but honestly, I don't practice in California, so I don't have enough knowledge to really speak on that. But I would just be real careful with what you hear.
And I understand that there was a lot of restorative efforts through her office as well. And so we shouldn't always think that maybe because there's an African-American person in that leadership role that now we can tip the scale completely over to the other side. It really doesn't happen that way. What we should look for and our expectation should be that maybe it adds balance, right? It isn't that now there's an African-American person here, so now we all get off. That's not what happens. It's balance. It's balance and equality. That should be the expectation. So I don't know, like you said, I haven't followed her career detail for detail, but I understood that her office did quite a bit in terms of restorative justice as well.
We can get away with all the crimes now.
Okay, and that's sometimes we think we walk into a courtroom, we're like, oh yes,
yeah.
But that is not the case.
That's really not the case, right?
Absolutely. What advice do you have for young people who you see in these cycles? Maybe they have the same offense twice. You see them doing some of the same things on paper that could lead them back in your courtroom again. What advice do you have when it comes to breaking the cycle? Those that just don't know better, how can they get out of that cycle, get some knowledge, get some awareness to be able to, what advice would you have to get them out of the cycle?
Come to the community court. Really reach out for resources. When opportunities present themselves for free resources, come. You may come and visit with one of the vendors at community court, or you may meet one of us and, get advice or speak with a person about what you're interested in. Redirect that energy. While, we've all worked hard, there's nothing overly exceptional about any one of us. Right? It's a lot of helping hands, community members that have watched out for us, teachers, church members, neighbors.
Are you saying that the only difference between you and somebody that comes in your court 3-4 times, your community, the decisions you make, the path, how you choose to overcome, so they can break the cycle?
Yeah, I'm saying that there's not a lot that separates us from people in the community.
Wow.
The grace of God,
Right.
And people given. There are so many people that have looked out for me.
Right.
All the way up until being appointed, and so reach out. There are people that want to offer services, and so just make yourself available. Come out, and you never know what might.
And that next offering of service is May 14th. Okay, you know,
May
look,
14th,
that's my alley-oop.
from
you know.
10 a.m. to 12 p.m., the Yet Center, 4900 Providence Street.
You might want to say it again. You know,
May
just in case
14th,
people didn't
Saturday,
hear.
10 a.m. to 12 p.m., the Yet Center, 4900 Providence Street.
We will
Come on
both
down.
be there. There's a brand new mural there on the Yet Center
Okay,
with
okay.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yes.
There's a brand new mural there. So come check it out. Come see us. Come get the resources.
Well, I would like to go on the record, and I think I speak on behalf of our owner and publisher, Karen Carter Richards of the Forward Times newspaper, that we would love to be a partner with you, a community partner, in making sure we get the word out continuously, not just one time, about these efforts, and make sure that this is something that all members of the community know about, not just on that side near Finnegan Park, but you know, in 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, South Park, Sunnyside, Greenspoint, wherever. We are located all over, and so we want, the Forward Times wants to be a part of that effort as well.
Thank you.
Agreed?
Agreed.
All right,
you.
all right, agreed,
Thank
all
you.
right.
In my head.
Yeah, so is there anything else that the community, I know she asked about, you know, young people, some advice to avoid, you know, the continued cycle, but, you know, what message would you share? I'll start with you, Judge Draper, to our young people.
Sure. So a couple of things to our young people and to our community at large. Shannon mentioned this, and I really want to stress this. A lot of us live stream. So to the extent you have questions about, like, what's going on down at the courthouse, how does it run, what's being done, what's being said, you can tune in from your phone, right? From your phone, from the internet. I'm Harris County Criminal Court at Law number 12, Harris County Criminal Court at Law number 4. But so many of us, if you just Google Harris County Criminal Courts at Law, live stream, it's right there.
That's right.
So that would be one of the biggest things I would say for our community, to kind of really engage. We want to engage with our community. We want to make sure that they know what we do, they know that we're accountable to them, and that they have access to us. And that was our way to do that. I can also be reached at www.judgegenesis.com or any of my social media. My handle is always Judge Genesis. So I love to engage. If you have questions, if you just want to know what's going on with my campaign, feel free to look me up on social media.
Yeah, you're on the ballot in November, right? Okay.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
And
Both
Harris
of
County
us.
Courts.
Yes.
Harris County Courts. We also have social media for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So tune in.
www.shannonbaldwin4judge.com. You can always reach me there, but you should also know most of the courts, we offer internships. They're not paid internships, but if you're interested in working directly with that, you can come on in, contact our courts. We'll welcome that opportunity. And as for what I would tell some young people, people who come in my court, and maybe you're getting this conviction, you've got some previous convictions, and so it's a little bit more difficult for you to find a job. I often tell them, say, listen, nobody's going to stop you from starting to have an entrepreneurial mind and decide how you're going to live the rest of your life. Anytime you want to, the criminal courts will take you in and put you in jail, and you can live it out the rest of the way right there. Or you can decide today that I'm going to decide how to do this in a legitimate legal fashion. Create a job, because it's out there. All of this information is available. It's just up to you to decide to do something different. I just had that conversation this week.
Yes. Judge Shannon Baldwin, everybody, Harris County Criminal Courts number 4. Judge Genesis Draper, who didn't want to be a judge, but she happy she is now. Harris County Criminal Court number 12. Make sure y'all check them out, engage with them. They want to engage with you. That'll do it for this week, y'all. Make sure y'all share the link. Of course, check me out every Wednesday, 12 noon Central Standard Time, right here on the Forward Times Facebook and Instagram pages. We out, y'all. Let's go.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank
That
y'all.
was fun. Thank you.
That's great.
Awesome. We will have you stay in your chair for just a second. I'm going to do some really quick